Launch of NASA's most powerful rocket ever on its test flight to the moon has been postponed.
Artemis 1 was delayed just 40 minutes before liftoff from Florida's Cape Canaveral after scientists discovered a hydrogen leak. It's hoped the rocket, known as the Space Launch System, will send astronauts back to the moon by 2025. Another launch attempt might be made on Friday.
Scientists at the University of Michigan are sending seeds into space aboard NASA's Artemis 1 mission. Federica Brandizzi is a professor at the Department of Plant Biology. She says they want to explore how humanity can sustain itself beyond Earth.
Well, we're trying to send seeds to space. We're trying to send seeds of a model plant species that's called Arabidopsis thaliana. These seeds have a different content of amino acids being modified to have more of essential amino acids compared to plants of the same species that have not been modified. And we're hoping that by experiencing space travel, these seeds will undergo some modifications induced by the space flight, from which we can learn a lot about how plants survive space flight.
So what's the ultimate goal here? Is it to find out whether we'll be able to grow food in space?
Yes, exactly. This is exactly what we're trying to do. We're trying to learn how we can grow food, how to make environments that are in space and sustainable. So we're trying to generate environments where plants can produce oxygen and food for the astronauts and anybody that will decide to move to space.
So obviously you're still conducting experiments to find this out, but how close do you think we are now to achieving that goal, to being able to grow food in space?
We're actually already growing some crops in space. So experiments are already undergoing to set up the conditions to have plants grown in space. There are already some very complex devices that allow some crops like lettuce, but also some dwarf wheat to grow in space. And this is just making an example. The challenge here is that we are limited by space, in space, and by the technology. But we as NASA, as all the space agencies, are really working very hard to set the conditions whereby we can have large-scale production of food. At the moment, we limit it to experimental conditions, setting up proof of principles from which then to develop larger-scale crops. So I don't think we are very far away from being successful.
And obviously the environment in space is very different from that on Earth. How much will growing food in this way affect how nutritious the food ends up being?
Incredibly high. Plants in space do not experience the same environment that they have on Earth. And here they've been selected and evolved to produce the food that we know. In space, it's a completely new environment. There is no gravity. The conditions for growing the food, the plants are artificial. And so these combined with radiations, combined also with vibrations of the capsules, is something that conditions the productivity of plants, also the well-being of humans in space.
And your experiment was one of just a few that was picked to go on this mission. How do you feel about it being on board?
I feel being part of history, to be totally honest with you. This flight is a culmination of years of work, from, of course, from all the technical standpoints, from NASA standpoints, but also for us in our lab setting up to go to space. And I think we're going to contribute to a better understanding of how we can improve human well-being. And I think this is just part of history.